Guess what? We are trendsetters. It is the start of a new year. So, of course, that means a spate of articles forecasting the hot new trends of 2026. And frankly, the education world is no different. So, lately, I've been reading a lot of blogs and articles on the hot new trends in education for 2026. And what I've realized through my reading is that those of us who are already embracing nature based and child led teaching, we're ahead of the curve. Hello, I'm Nicole Dravillas Ravel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. Now, last year, in January of 2025, I did a video talking about the trends to ditch for 2025. This year, I'm switching gears a little bit. I'm going to be a little bit more positive. And so this year, I want to highlight 5 hot new trends that work and that I recommend we embrace for 2026. Now, truthfully, none of these trends that I'm about to mention are actually new, but they are just starting to be buzzwords in the larger education community. And so I'm hoping that by highlighting them, we start a little army, right? We do them, we talk about them to other people, and we get the ball rolling with these things that I do think are important for young children. All right, the trends. Trend number 1 is the embrace of neuroscience to inform teaching practices. Now, on the surface, this might sound really rigid and regimented, right? Who wants to consult brain science every time we do something with children? But if you had a chance to catch the video that I did on the science of reading in the fall, you'll know that what research shows, if we really want to look at the neuroscience of how young children learn, they learn through play. They learn through hands-on experiences. They learn through that opportunity to manipulate and experiment with objects. So, in order to follow the neuroscience when working with young children, that means we're going to step back from long whole group circle times as our primary method of delivering the academics. And we're going to move toward more time where children are spent small groups, individually, with provocations, with invitations that we've set up to facilitate their play. It means we're going to step back from assuming that what every child needs, wants, and is ready for is exactly the same type of cookie cutter activity. And we're going to move toward recognizing what each individual child is bringing to the learning experience in terms of their strengths, in terms of their interests, in terms of their individual readiness for different types of challenges. Right. Number 2 is micro-learning. Micro-learning is the buzzword of the moment, I think. And this one goes hand in hand with the neuroscience piece, because basically what micro-learning means is that we've learned that children do not learn things from sitting through long lectures. And we could actually increase understanding and retention over time by addressing learning in super short bursts, right? So say 5 minutes. these routines that we are repeating over time. So, for example, at Wildwood Nature School, sometimes we line up based on first sounds, right? We're going to head into the forest. If your name begins with go ahead and get in line. If your name begins with B, go ahead and get in line. And we might do that for 3 days to a week until the children catch on. And then we're going to line up in a different way, right? We're going to line up based on how many syllables do you have in your name. If you have 2 syllables, go ahead and line up. We'll do that for a while, right? Until they catch on. And then we're going to backtrack, right? In essence, review the first letter sounds. We're going to go back to syllables, then we're going to go on to something new. Maybe instead of first letter sounds, we just say the letter that your name begins with. Right? And we're going to do the same thing with math. I call this spiraling, right? Because we're starting something new. We're spiraling back through everything else, and we're going back around to start something new. And then each time we spiral back, we're building on it. So for example, let's say we did patterns in math for a while, and then we moved on to activities that were more about counting. And then when we spiral back to patterns, maybe we're not doing A-B patterns anymore. Maybe we're doing A-B-C patterns, or maybe we're doing A-A-B-B patterns. So we're adding a level of complexity each time. And honestly, this matches young children. Like if you've ever noticed your preschoolers, right? Well, they will get obsessed with something, whatever it is, and they will want to repeat it over and over and over again until they get bored, right? And they move on to something new. They know this. They know this idea of micro learning. They're going to move on to something new until, right, there's a new challenge that captivates them, and that original idea is coming back to them. All right. Trend number 3 is project-based and skill-based learning. Right? The larger education world is catching on to the power of real-world applications and critical problem solving that you can develop by having your learning have real world reasoning. So, for example, at Wildwood Nature School, on a daily basis, we have real world reasons for why we need to use science or math. So, when we go to the creek, we always test the depth, right? We're measuring the depth and the speed of the current so that we know whether or not it is safe for us to step into the creek and what precautions we might need to take. We are always counting our kindling to make sure that we have enough for the next fire, especially because we get the rainy period. So we can't always gather kindling in the day. We might need to store it for use, right? We have our garden, right, where we are growing plants that we are then using on a daily basis to cook our snacks, which again is another measurement, direction following activity. Right? These are all daily routines. And then we also up the ante here at Wildwood Nature School by co-creating the curriculum with the children, right? What are you interested in learning about? What do we want to investigate? And how are we going to go about doing that? And then we build in our emergent literacy skills, our writing skills, our science and math skills into that investigation, whatever it might be. Right? And so project-based learning, if we're doing it that way, often necessitates alternate ways of demonstrating what the children have learned and what they know. And so this is trend number 4, which is moving away from testing, right, where it's really disconnected, to more authentic forms of assessment And this is the power of documentation that we use in forest schools because it's necessary, right? It's always been necessary when you are doing something untraditional with children to say to the parents that even though it looks like we are just playing in the forest every day, here's our documentation of the real learning that is happening, the real changes, the real development that are happening in each individual child. All right. A final new trend for 2026, which ironically is being pushed by the corporate world on the education world. And I'm not usually one for listening to the push of the corporate world, but this is a good one. They are pushing soft skills because companies are realizing that what they need this century in the modern day workforce are people who know how to work as a team, are people who can adapt to rapidly changing situations. And this requires the skills that we know are foundational, those soft skills that are foundational to all types of academic learning and social emotional health, right? I used to say that when I was teaching first grade, I don't need children to come to me already knowing how to read. I need them to come to me with the skills of knowing how to learn. I need them to be able to regulate emotions when they get frustrated. I need them to have active listening skills. I need them to be able to negotiate with their classmates and get along. Right? These are all skills that we used to teach in preschool and kindergarten by letting children play and negotiating with their playmates, by letting children direct their own learning and letting them make mistakes and work through it, right? And so we need to get back to building those foundational skills in early childhood so that we are preparing children for their further academic careers, their further social success, right? And then, yeah, sure, their workplace success, because these are just skills that are going to allow that. And so sometimes trends are just that, right? Passing fads that we should let go the way of bell bottom plaid pants. But I encourage you in 2026 to fully embrace these 5 trends this year, right? If you haven't already, right? Lean into the research to teach the way that young children learn through hands on movement, interaction, exploration in the real world, right? Take advantage of those short, teachable micro moments, right? Focus on the soft skills that are actually foundational, and then document all of this, right? So that the larger education world and the public at large starts to catch on to the value of all of these trends. Right? That's your assignment. And then I will see you here next week for another episode of Wildwood Teaching. I will see you there.